Meredith, you said something earlier when we started the interview about working with artists and creative personnel. From
Mhm.
my perspective, creative people are the worst business people on the planet because their art is so important to them. They're also part of the reason that I believe that they don't make good business people is because they're emotional. And I think that in order to be creative and in order to be emotional, I forget which side of the brain it is that you use. You know, that you use the opposite side of the brain than the more analytical thinkers like myself. So while I appreciate the creative side and I appreciate the artists, I also know that for the most part, those guys suck when it comes to business. How do you bridge that gap between the tools that they use that make them successful theoretically? You know, that the product tools that they use to create product are not the same tools that you use to create a valuable business.
That's a very good question, and very, I've come to that realization as well. I have basically with my coaching business, I started with the nation with the idea that I really wanted, because of my festival, I really wanted to help artists, creatives really grow. And then I figured out that that was going to be too difficult. That I don't know if I could do that. And so with my festival, and when I say I love to empower creatives and artists, musicians, all of those types, they're definitely, because I can understand both, because I have a diverse background. I really understand both sides. But yeah, with Flow Jam or with my festival, that's how I empower them. Basically, is getting them paid, getting them a stage to play on, getting them a room to house their offerings, not necessarily take them as a coaching client to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, because that's not really how their mindset works
Hmm.
or how they want to play in this world. So it's really more about, with the festival, it's about empowering a community, a grassroots developed in my backyard, a community around art and healing, and bringing culture back into a place that was very lost in that is very lost in development, and you know making a ton of money.
What would you tell then that artist? What advice would you give? Because particularly the creative side, those people are very important in business today. There's certainly a spot for them in all business. I mean, I use creative people, and I'm in the transportation business. I think that we always think about creative people are the ones that are making the Super Bowl ads. Or that that sort of development of websites and things of that nature, but I mean, they have use throughout, at least for me, throughout all different businesses. And so I'm curious, what advice do you give them about the businessman that they would probably otherwise not understand because their approach is so different than ours is? And I ask that question from the perspective of I can't draw a straight line if I had to. I'm colorblind. I can't see colors. I'm the least creative human being from that perspective that you'll ever find. But I've bought and sold a dozen companies over the years and look at business very differently. So what would your advice be to somebody like that needs to figure out how my brain works when their brain works so completely opposite?
So, to my advice to the creative entrepreneur,
Yeah. Yeah.
to the musician, or so I would say that they, kind of what you're talking about, they have to let go of, they're selling a product, they're selling a commodity, which is their creative art or their creative music, and they have to serve an audience. So it's difficult because they're so passionate about their art, and they're like doing it in a way that they want to do it. For example, I have a cousin who's works for Sony, and he worked with Mumford and Sons. He works with tier level bands and gets them, to the next level. And I work with, artists and musicians that are local grassroots, not on the radio. And there's definitely a different, we've talked about the different mentalities that his bands have that want to make, it big with these big record labels, and the artists that I work with that are grassroots, underground, like we don't really care what the masses are doing, like we're doing this. To say that if you want to make money, if you want to really do it as a sustainable business, you have to let go of the attachment that you have, and be open to feedback and being malleable, changeable, adaptable to what people really want so that they will buy what you are creating.
And many of those, I mean, there's the old cliche about the starving artist is a cliche for a reason. There's many the starving artist. And I suppose from an artistic perspective, if I were counseling them, many of they want their art out there. They want people to see what it is that they're creating. And many of the circumstances that you will create for yourself, many of the policies and the programs that you might put into place that would make you successful monetarily can also make you successful in getting that information out there. So the lessons that I might have in my head from running a business are the same ones that would benefit them greatly to getting their message out, even if they never made a dollar.